Hi, welcome back. So what we've done up to this point, we have added our formulas in so that it looks like figure 1-1 on page 10 of our textbook. My recommendation is to get your numbers to jump, to make them work for you and have them be correct before you do any additional fancy formatting. Why? Because some of the next section that we're going to talk about, and we're going to just cover it briefly now, we'll get into more detail in the upcoming weeks. But once you start getting into formatting, you can spend a lot of time in there. You can make something look pretty, but what are you making pretty? You got to get those numbers to be correct first. So we're going to make the assumption here that our numbers are in great shape. We like them, and now we want to focus on our target audience and make this look like something that they want to pay attention to. So my first thing, I'm going to kind of bump around here, but I am referring to figure 1-1 on page 10, and I notice my total sales is bold, as is the value is bold. Now we already talked about why the number is a wee bit off, but I'm going to leave it as formulas. So I can, sitting on cell D15, I can go up to my home menu and click on the B button in the font section. If I hover over it, I will see that it says bold. I'm going to do the same thing for total sales. Now I could, instead of clicking on the button, notice that in parentheses it says Control plus B. I could hold down my Control key and I could click on B and it will do the same thing. Notice it says total sale, but in the formula bar it says total sales. So that becomes important for you to understand that even though I only see SALE here, there is a little bit more. But I want it to show target audience, they're going to be annoyed when they see total sale. They want to see sales. So I'm going to bring my mouse up between column A and column B, and I have a perpendicular with horizontal arrows. And what I can do is I can hold my mouse, the left mouse click down. I'll hold it down and I'll drag. Right now it says 8.43. That's kind of sort of how many characters based upon what the fonts and the font size are. So I'm going to hold this down and I'm going to drag across a little bit. So there, now I have it showing total sales. It's a little bit larger. I want to do the same thing up on row 2 with month and sales dollars. So I want to make those bold. But notice also I have them average P and sales dollars. Well, what I can do is I can, with these cells selected, I can click on the wrap text button, and that brings my average price down. Now unit sales fits, but if I bring the width of column B back a smidgen, you'll see that it sets up a wee bit differently. And my sales dollars, well, gee, they seem to fit, but notice I'm showing 0.30, 0.40. I'm showing decimal positions. Let's get rid of the decimal positions and then we can modify that slightly. So I'm going to highlight or select my sales dollars and I'm going to decrease my decimal position. Understand that even though this says 26,673, the math that will happen is based on the true value. It will include the decimal positions. So now I can bring this back a smidgen and I see sales dollars. So far so good. It's looking very similar to figure 1-1. So let me go and I'll make these look like money. Good. And the last piece I want to deal with is this general merchandising world, retail sales in millions. I'm going to do a couple of different things here with this. First thing I want to do is I'm going to highlight or select from A1 through D1 because these are the used columns that I have. And I'm going to click on a button, wrap text. Okay, so now I see a whole lot more, but it's all in A1. But if I click on the merge and center button, I will see that it sets up a little bit nicer for me. So now I can bring my mouse up between row 1 and 2 and doing the same as I did with column A to column B, making it wider. I can make it narrower. And why did it not break where I had thought? Well, because it's breaking based on how much it can fit in a particular area. So how do I change that? Well, what I can do is I can come down in front on the formula bar in front of the 2011, and if I hit, bear with me for a second, if I hold down the Alt key and click on Enter, it will basically put in a carriage return so that it goes down to the new line. It's still in the same row, but there's 2 lines. And how do I make this prettier? Well, I can come in and I can change my colors. Well, I think I'm going to use this first. The theme color, I want to put the shading in. It's kind of sort of a bluish color. And if I want my numbers to be white, I can go with the white. So I get a sense of there's what I want. Now this happens to be all in Calibri 11. My recommendation for universal design is to always make things in 12, and it's up to you if you use Calibri. A number of people use Arial or they use Times New Roman. I like Arial myself, but oh, look what happens when I use Arial in 12. I see a lot of pound, pound, pound. This is the easiest error that you can fix. What this means is that there's not enough space for the lines, so I can come over here and I can just spread it out a little bit to make those all fit, and I can do the same for column B, and I'm going to do the same also for column C because I don't like that average and then the E is just after it, so I can make it a little bit wider. Alright, last piece is these appear to be centered, so I'm going to highlight A2 through D2 and I'm going to click on the center button. So a lot of things that we can do. Now our worksheet is starting to look like the figure 1-1 in the book. So let's take a peek. Even though a lot of people don't print, they just open files and they look at them, understand that somebody eventually will want to print whatever it is you've created. So I always recommend you do a file print preview. I don't recommend anything to be printed, but I do require file print preview. So click on your file button and go to print. And what do I mean by print preview is I want to see that this is here. Now notice in this case it all fits within one page. It's sort of hugging the upper left hand corner. That's okay. Let's talk about what we have here. If we were to go to the printer, we have a number of possibilities. Your printers are here. Do I want to print only the active sheet, or do I want to print entire workbook? Remember, there can be one sheet, sheet 1, sheet 2, but once you start to get into sheet 2, sheet 3, all your sheets should have names. Does your printer have one-sided or multiple-sided collating? Portrait orientations. Sometimes you're going to find that your work that you've created is just enough so that it goes on to a second page, but if you change to landscape, it will take the paper and turn it 90 degrees, and that might be easier because your target audience can read that. Now I have normal margins here, which is left and right of 0.7 inches. Wide margins, everything would move in a little bit more, or you have narrow margins. Sometimes just modifying to narrow margins will help fit something on a page. I'll go back and leave it to normal though. And we have scaling, which we won't talk about right now, but we also have something called page setup. And we'll get into that more in the book. So again, I'm not going to print, but I want you to get a sense of this is what we would do. This is what we would have. Okay. So I hope a lot of that, it was an intro to a lot of what we're going to be covering in class. It was fairly quick what we went through, but at least you can get a sense of how the data in figure 1-1 was created. Please save this for future reference. Thank you.